and welcome back to My Brain Is A Wonderland, a podcast for neurodivergent women and the people who love them. Now, you may have noticed that this episode is coming out on a Tuesday instead of a Wednesday, and that is because My Brain Is A Wonderland is now coming at you twice a week, on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So this is my first Tuesday episode, and today we are going to talk about pets. Pets, how much we love them, how much they stress us out, how much they take over our lives, good and bad. If you've listened to my first episodes, and I hope you have, there's a lot of background story there, then you will know that my husband and I adopted 2 dogs from the county shelter here in Florida in January 2020. So right before lockdown, right before the pandemic. And I just want to talk about what that experience was like, why we adopted 2 dogs at once, because that was definitely due to my neurodivergency, and how it has been looking after 2 dogs, and maybe some strategies that you can use if you're struggling with your pets, because I definitely struggle with mine sometimes due to my sensory issues and executive dysfunction. So I'll start at the beginning, and like I said, if you've listened to the first episodes, you'll know that my husband and I moved back to Florida in November 2019. We had discussed for a long time about adopting dogs. We discussed getting rodents and things like that, but we'd just been living in different cities and moving every few years at that point, and we just didn't feel settled and didn't feel like it was the right time to take on a pet that we might have to move states with, put him in a car and drive for hours. It just didn't seem like the right thing. All of the apartments we lived in, none of them had yards. You would have to pay a lot more money to get a yard, so it just wasn't anything we ever had. We had a couple of balconies, but other than that, we just didn't think it was right. So once we moved to Florida, back to Florida, and we knew we were settling there indefinitely, that would be our place we were going to live, we decided to get an apartment with a yard. So we moved into a duplex with a yard. This was in November 2019. And then by January, we felt kind of settled. We'd planned this for a long time. We both landed on our feet with our jobs. I got promoted within a month of getting one job. My husband got a great job, and we just felt like we were in the right space. And we talked about for a long time getting 1 dog. The whole plan was to get 1 dog, and then once they were settled, get them a friend. Get the one to keep them company so they're not sad, and all that kind of stuff. Well, what ended up happening is my impulsiveness, which is from my ADHD, not to say I cannot control it, I can control it if I really want to, but when I don't want to control it, there's no getting past it. My impulsiveness is really what led us to getting 2 dogs. I don't know why, but I just thought, if we're getting 2 dogs anyway, eventually, why don't we just get 2 dogs right now? It just came into my head one day. I'm not sure why. Honestly, I couldn't pinpoint it. I couldn't tell you why all of a sudden I just had this urge to just get 2 dogs at that time. I'm going to guess, just off the top of my head right now, that I was seeking some kind of dopamine. This was not even a month after I'd had my new job, but I do get bored in jobs really quickly if they're not offering me a lot of growth and development. It was after the holidays. I may have been on a come down from that. I'm not sure. But I'm guessing there were some things feeding into the fact that I just decided, let's get 2. It sounds exciting. So I kind of put it forth to my husband, said all these reasons. We're going to get 2 anyway. Why don't we just get 2? It'll be really easy to just have 2 to begin with, right? And he, I'm not going to take anything away from him and his decision making. He said, okay, but I will tell you, and anyone here with, not anyone, but maybe some people out there with ADHD, I don't want to pigeonhole you, but my experience is that I have, especially when my ADHD is taking over and not my autism, I can have a quite intense personality with the people that know me really well. So if you don't know me very well, I come off very stoic, very quiet, very reserved, don't talk much, don't laugh or emote much. I'm just very together. If you know me really well, I can be really intense sometimes. I can be intense with my talking, my opinions, no, this is right, or this is what we should do. And I'm not even trying to push it down your throat. I'm just saying, this is what I think is right. I've been told before in jobs that I intimidate people, that I can intimidate people because I seem so sure of myself that people aren't used to that I just kind of say, this is what I'm doing, and I'm doing it. And that scares people, apparently. So this is kind of how I presented it to my husband, right? Like, 2 dogs seems like a great idea. They'll never be lonely. We can afford it. Super cute. There's 2 of us, 2 dogs. Great. So he agrees to it, and we decide to go to the county shelter to adopt dogs. I had worked and volunteered a bit in animal welfare in my 20s, and I knew what it was like in a county shelter, that they're really just so underfunded and every day are making decisions about who lives and dies. That's the reality at a county shelter. And it's not even always based on aggressiveness. They just might not even have the space. So it just gets really sad and really devastating because there are great dogs out there that just don't ever get a chance. And we did have an option to go to kind of these humane society or a nonprofit where the dogs are, I don't want to say really expensive, but I think a dog was like $200 at the local nonprofit. That being said, our dogs were $8 only, but man, did they come with a lot of health issues. So that's something I'll talk about in the next 5 to 10 minutes about that. But we basically went to the county shelter and decided we're adopting 2 dogs. That's it. We'd planned on it. We're adopting 2 dogs. I really don't recommend this. I really don't. And maybe you're listening and going, yeah, you're insane. Why would you ever do that? Maybe you know this. If you don't know this, if you're sitting there going, why? That sounds lovely. Sounds lovely jubbly. 2 dogs together. Loving it. Keep listening. So we walk into the shelter. We walk into the room where the dogs are kept. And if you've been in a shelter, a county shelter, or you've seen videos online, on TikTok of these sad gotcha day videos, you may have seen that they're in these kind of little rooms with a bed and all this kind of stuff. These guys weren't in rooms. They were in little cages with wheels, with a bowl and a little lofted kind of like stretch fabric bed that they couldn't tear up, right? If it's fluffy, they could eat it if they're stressed, so they didn't give them that. And we go into the room and we see the first dog, who I think they set it up this way. They put their best dog out front, right? The one who should be getting adopted. And he walks right up to the door and he sits down and just breaks your frickin' heart, okay? He looks you in the eye with these big doe eyes and you're done. That's it. Like, if you walk into a shelter and you're even anywhere close to adopting, just know you're going to be done. You are going to end up with a dog. It's just going to happen. So you need to be prepared for that, right? If your emotions are going to take over. We see him and we look at his notes. They all have notes on their door. And his notes say, Playgroup Superstar. Anyone here who has worked in marketing, maybe is a realtor, knows what this means. If you don't know, I'm going to tell you. Playgroup Superstar, you think, oh, so sweet. He gets along with everyone. He gets along with you and other kids and other dogs, and it's just so great. He must be such a great dog. Here's what I'm going to tell you that means. Playgroup Superstar means absolutely psychotic. What I mean by that is he is going to need hours every day of playtime. And if he doesn't get that, he's going to be stressed. He's going to start eating things. He's going to start acting out. And that's exactly what he did. Because, spoiler, we adopted this crazy guy. So we saw that it said Playgroup Superstar. And we just thought, sold, baby. This is exactly what we're looking for. We go to look at the other dogs. And as we leave his cage door, he literally stays on his butt and is just scooting towards the door while still sitting as if to say, I'm so good, please, please. We go and look at the other dogs real quick, just some of them. They all seem actually psychotic. So we go back to him, take him out into the play yard, and absolutely fall in love with him. I mean, he's so sweet, just so lovable, playful, obviously. Bring him back in. I walked him. My husband and I wanted to make sure that I could handle any dog physically. We didn't want dogs that, if they escaped or were trying to do something you didn't want them to do, that I couldn't handle them physically. So I walked him out there, totally had control of him, felt good about it. Put him back in the cage, and then we go to look around for matching dog, okay? Our little buddy that's going to go with this guy. We walk around, and man, there were just some crazy dogs in there, and not even aggressive, just there was a dog maybe 120 pounds, just barking. Barking, barking, barking. Did not stop. And we were living in an apartment at the time, so we knew that's just crazy. And he's too big for me to handle if he gets out of trouble. It gets in trouble. You just, even if he's chasing a squirrel, he's going to pull your shoulder out of joint. You got to be careful with these things. I know someone that actually happened to, where their dog chased a squirrel, and she was airborne, and her shoulder came out of her socket because she kept a hold of the leash. She didn't want to let her dog go. So you really need to think about what you can manage physically, as well as mentally and emotionally. So we thought we had the physical thing down. We didn't. I'll tell you why later. Come around the corner of these other cages to look for a second dog after we've seen the big one that's barking. He's crazy. We decide, love you, sweetheart, but no. Come around the corner, and this little cute, just a little smaller than the first dog, than the playgroup superstar we saw, comes out of her bed. So the first one, playgroup superstar, was a boy. We were looking for a girl to match with him. And she gets out of her bed, limps over to the cage door. Her ears are down. We actually call her Dobby because she looks like Dobby from Harry Potter when she's anxious and sad. Her ears go back and down. She has kind of a pointed face. She's just the cutest thing. She doesn't bark. And the two dogs either side of her in cages are barking incessantly, like crazy barking. And she's not barking, which obviously she's scared, right? But we decided if we live in an apartment and the dog is barking in the shelter, not a good idea to bring them home. Let me tell you guys, that just came to the top of my head. That's the one good decision we made. That was the one decision where we were like, no, that makes sense. And maybe if my husband hadn't been there, God knows what had happened. I might have ended up with that 120-pound barker. I really don't know. But that was the one decision we made in the moment that was like, they cannot bark because of our apartment. So we take her outside, this female dog, fall in love with her. She's sweet, seems scared but loving. And the next thing is to introduce them together. We go out into the play yard together, and volunteers bring them out together and introduce them. And it's a super love fest. They completely fall in love with each other, and it's great times. They're closing soon. I had to get the afternoon off work. It's already been a couple of hours. We've got to get them before they close. So we got to push through. So we go to the front to adopt them. They're being held in the back, the dogs, and we go to the front to do all the paperwork. And this employee, is doing her job. I totally get it. Is there for the pets. But she just sped through their ailments so quickly and made them seem like they were nothing. Which, I will do an episode about my auditory processing. I don't process speech very quickly or at all sometimes, especially if the sentences are long. I have to have subtitles, transcriptions, things like that. So I'm not always present if someone is just talking to me. And we're sitting there, and she's saying, one of the female dog has a luxating patella, blows that off, it's no big deal. That means her knee cap is dislocated. Her knee joint is out of the socket. That's why she's limping, okay? Which it's fine, it's nothing. They said they both have kennel cough. Oh, it's fine, they'll just get meds, it's no big deal. And they both have skin infections. It's fine, it's no big deal. We kind of sign this paperwork and say, okay, great. Get the dogs, get them home. We realize very quickly how sick these dogs are. The kennel cough is really serious. The male dog is sleeping that night panting so hard, with his heart racing so hard, while dark brown goo just pours out of his nose into puddles by his face. And when we took him to the vet, 2 days later, the vet tech was horrified. Like, absolutely horrified. The vet was also like, they adopted them to you like this? I will speak to that. I get it. They're trying to get them out of the shelter as fast as possible because they don't have the money to medicate these dogs and get them healthy. So they need to get them out and adopted as fast as possible, so it's your problem now. I get that, because if not, they're going to die, either from being sick or from being put down because they don't have any space. So I get that. Whereas at the nonprofits where they're charging like $200 up for animals, usually it's because they fostered these animals, they've funded surgery for them, they've cleared up any of these ailments they may have before they're adopted out. That's not common in a county shelter. Yours may be different, but it's not common. So I just wanted to speak to that. I understand why they did that, and it's a sad reason they have to do it, but I get that. So they have all these ailments, and it took months. I mean, probably the rest of 2020 at least, and hundreds of dollars to first of all get rid of their kennel cough, to heal their skin infections. The female dog had a skin infection that was just from stress. The male dog turned out had major allergies and was susceptible to skin infections that kept flaring up. He had to go on 3 different medications, one after another, for months to nip this thing in the bud. Then we found out the luxating patella on the female was not normal. This wasn't just a little, oh, it's fine, she has an aching knee. It's not common in bigger dogs. In smaller dogs, they're sometimes born with it if they're overbred, right? Their knees might be out of joint. She is a pit bull. She's bigger, that's not normal, which means it was probably an impact injury, either from being hit by a car or being beaten. And she also has on the same side of her body missing teeth. So it does look like she may have been hit by a car, but what ended up happening also, as we got to know her, is I would exclaim at her. You know when you look down at your dog or your animal and you go, oh, you're so cute, and kind of, say something loud and cute, and your hands kind of go, she would flinch. She would she would squint her eyes, like, ugh, and kind of go small real quick, because she thought we were going to beat her. So I'm not sure where it came from, and it breaks my heart to say that. Ugh. But I'm not sure where it came from, whether she was hit by a car or I think she definitely was beaten just based on the squinting reactions. But she may have also been hit by a car. If she was beaten enough to get a luxating patella and missing teeth, I don't even want to know. Like, breaks my heart. Okay, so we get them home, and we have these 2 dogs. The female is a pit bull. The male is a Staffordshire Bull Terrier. A lot of people call them pit bulls too. They have the big head, the big nose, the big doe eyes. The male's name was Leon when we adopted him at the shelter, and he knew his name, so we kept his name. The female's name, she was a blonde dog, so they called her Raven, so I think they thought that was cute or something. She didn't know her name, and we didn't like the name Raven, so we renamed her Claire Bear. And if anyone's a fan of Resident Evil out there, yes, they are named after the main characters, the guy Leon and the woman Claire, in the Resident Evil video games. We were looking at partners that we knew, and my husband goes, wait, isn't Leon the name of the guy in... And then there's a girl and her name's Claire. Let's do Claire. She learned her name literally in 2 days. She was responding to Claire within 2 days. It's like she was looking for a family. It was just so adorable. So it was a lot when we first got them, okay? All of these health issues that we had to deal with, having 2 dogs made it really difficult because they both had such unique needs. You have to address them so aggressively, so they had to go to the vet a lot. Taking them together was a whole ordeal we had to do together. You couldn't do them one at a time, so it was just a lot. Anyway, they get healthy after about a year, and in that time, each of them gains at least 10 pounds. And this isn't fat. There was some fat there because they were so skinny and sick, but it was muscle. So these dogs were so sick, so stressed, so underfed and not eating, that they were really weak when we got them. So if you remember back, I said that my husband said, can you manage them physically while I'm walking them out at the shelter? I could at the beginning. Once that year went by, I can now only physically manage the female. She is, I want to say, 42 to 45 pounds. The male is around 60 to 62 pounds. Pure muscle, pure defiance. So if he wants to do anything you don't want him to do, he can do it. I can't stop him, right? I can't hold him back physically. My husband is able to. I cannot. And that's a problem. That's a problem when you're trying to protect your dog, when you're trying to protect other people, when you're trying to protect yourself. You need to be able to manage your pets physically. And so that was a mistake that we made that we didn't realize. That you can learn this lesson from me is that if you're adopting from a shelter and probably even from a nonprofit, because they're going to be stressed in those rooms, is that they're going to gain weight. So think about how big your dog is allowed to be in your apartment, how big you'd like your dog to be, and how much you can actually manage. You know, my husband for a long time wanted a really big dog. He's 6'2", my husband, not the dog. He's 6'2". And wanted to be able to spoon a dog. He grew up with very large dogs in his family home that he could spoon, and he really wanted a doggy spooning partner. I don't know how that sounds, but it's true. And when we got our dogs, he was a little bit disappointed that they weren't bigger, but once the male gained 10 pounds, he was like, perfect, spoon partner, done. So after all that, you know, the years gone by, we've gotten all of the medical stuff mostly figured out. Claire had to go. She's still on a pill every day for her knee, so be aware of that, right? We had to put in money on lots of different medications, but now she has a pill that costs like $1 something a day. It's $300 every 3 months or something. So it's, you know, a sizable amount of money goes on that stuff. But basically we had to figure out how to live with these guys, how to manage daily life, because our life was just upended when we got these dogs. Our apartment started getting really dirty. Our AC vents were filling with fur and dirt constantly. We had them shut down a couple of times because we didn't realize they were so dirty and you had to replace them way more often. At one point, my husband said to me, kind of incredulously, we live with wild animals. They're so, we have dirty, wild animals in our bed with us. He just couldn't get over it that we kind of welcomed these mad animals into our life, I guess. That's probably after you've had a baby and 6 weeks in, you're like in the fog going, what have we done? Why did we do this? That's where he was at one point. Also, I realized within that year, and remember, we got the dogs in January 2020. If you've gone back to my first episode, I was not diagnosed until December 2020 and really didn't know what I was dealing with till then. And even then, didn't really know, had to look up a lot of stuff. But I didn't realize that year I was dealing with a lot of sensory issues to do with the dogs. And I still do deal a lot with that. My husband does too. He has suffered with migraines almost all his life and has really sensitive hearing and cannot be around a lot of loud noises. So you ask, why did we get 2 large dogs? I don't know. Keep listening. It's the madness. So my husband is dealing with sensory issues. I've got really bad sensory issues, and these dogs are quite loud. And here's the thing about getting 2 dogs, right, that we said, oh, they'll keep each other company. They won't play with us. They'll play with each other. We're wrong. You're wrong. If you think that's what's going to happen, you're wrong. Think about when you're on a plane and there are 2 babies. One of them starts crying. What does the other one do? Hears them and they start crying at each other, right? That is what happens. Instead of them playing together, they just rile each other up constantly. Instead of one of them just being sleepy, easy to deal with, we'll play just with you, get your energy out. We've got 2 dogs that are constantly at us, and it can be really a lot sometimes. I'll give you an example. I had gotten home from a work trip a few weeks ago, so I hadn't seen them for like 4 days. and they get quite crazy when I go on work trips. I'll come home. They both have to be on my body for hours after I get home and kind of pin me to the couch and just be on me. And if they're not, it's a huge deal. And I decided, I think it was a few hours later, to sit in the reclining chair. They started just both barking at me, just barking at me. You know, when you get, I don't know if you do know, but if you have dogs, you know, where they bark at you, just making sound at you. And you kind of look at them and you don't even know what they want. They're just rah, rah, just barking at you. They're obviously trying to tell you something. They want to go out, they want your attention, they want something, but it was just too much in the time. And actually what ended up happening is I ended up slapping my hands over my ears and I just squeezed my eyes shut because I couldn't take it. I traveled on a plane. I'd done like a 10-hour day that day and then traveled on a plane that evening from another state and then come home and was dealing with that. And I just slapped my hands over my ears and squeezed my eyes closed, and my husband jumped up from the couch immediately and he went to let the dogs out. So that's an advantage when you're in a couple, is being able to take the weight off when the other person is struggling. And because my husband suffers from sensory issues like sound as well, he totally gets it. And when he saw me do that, he knew I was done. He knew I couldn't deal. I was completely done. I was shut down. I was about to enter, you know, if he hadn't done that, or if I'd been trapped in a car or in an event or something, if I'd done that, it would have probably led to really bad sensory problems. Kind of this, I used to call it a migraine, but it's like a sensory explosion that it just builds and builds and builds. And then all of a sudden, you just get this kind of silence, like this doo, and then I vomit. So I just go, it's like my head is just swimming, sound. It cuts, and then I vomit. It's like me getting it out. And then when I vomit, I'm like, not good, but I'm like, okay, got it out kind of thing. And so he knows when that's happening. He's got to help if he can. And usually we go by, you know, like in the morning when we've got to let the dogs out and feed them, whoever seems less, gets up. We just understand if the other person is dead to the world or like didn't sleep well, then we're going to be the one who gets up with the dogs. And we're fine doing that. And we're lucky to have each other for that and to have that understanding. Honestly, it's probably partly why we got together to begin with. And I'll do a whole episode about how we got together and all that stuff, where we got together. But that's probably partly why, is that we recognized in each other that we couldn't be in sensory places together for a long period of time. That sound, light, we used to hang out a lot in dark rooms together, you know, in college and stuff. So it's really helpful having that support. Another thing I would say is if you are struggling with this and you don't have a supportive spouse, or you don't have a partner, or it's just you, or you're both struggling, I have found a lot of relief from loop earplugs. That is a earplug that goes around a lot on the neurodivergent boards and communities and online. They have changed my life, and I'll do an episode about them too. But I will oftentimes in my own home, if the dogs are just too much that day or I'm depleted, I'll wear, if my husband isn't home, I'll wear like both of them in. And you can still hear things, but it greatly reduces the sound. And then they also have a dampener that's supposed to take away almost all of your sound. You could put that in if you wanted to. And then if my husband is around, because I want to be able to hear him talk or whatever, I'll put one in just to take the edge off. Just to be able to filter out what I need to. Because, like I said, I can really quickly melt down and just be not good. We also thought about taking them to daycare, getting their energy out that way. We had the, money for it, but think about that, you think about, I just got to feed this dog. Well, daycare is a lot of work, a lot of money, and taking them there and that kind of thing. We decided in the end, there were a lot of horror stories about daycares, and we decided not to take them. And the female dog, we're not 100% sure how she would do in that situation. I don't think she would like it. The male dog, the playgroup superstar, he would go nuts, okay, in a good way. He would freaking love it, but I just don't trust them. I've just heard terrible horror stories. So we actually found a pet sitting company that comes to your house, and they deal with our dogs when we're not here, when we go on vacations together, and they come into the home 4 times a day and look after them. But we also have started doing, or are going to do, we've been thinking about it, but we're executive dysfunction, haven't booked it yet, but we're planning to, is to have them come for like an hour once a week on days that we're both at work, and to just play with the dogs. That's it. They would just play with them, get their energy out. We don't ask this company to walk them. It would be too crazy. We have a big yard, so we just ask them to play with them. Though, that being said, the best thing for your dog, if you have a dog, if you don't walk them every day, that is the first step to getting their energy out, their deviancy, their defiant side, anything that is bothering you. Our male dog started eating the female dog's poop recently. We know why that is. He's bored. He was bored, and now he has a fixation on it, and it's just annoying, and it's our fault, and that's the thing. When it gets hot in Florida, we find it difficult to find times where we're both not working, where the temperature is good, where we can walk them, because we really can't walk them in 100 degrees. Especially the female, she pulls like crazy and just overheats herself. So it's just, you got to think about these strategies and what you'd have to pay for these kinds of things. We're also planning to get them training. We did not factor that in financially when we first got them, and also just didn't think we needed it at first. I mean, we didn't even think about it. It was not even considered. Forget, whether we discussed it. It was not even on the table. And now we're like, duh, we should have got them training right away. They have all these bad habits now. They were 3 years old when we adopted them. That's the shelter going by their teeth and everything, so they weren't babies. So they had a lot of history, right? And training can help bond you to your dog and also set up expectations and boundaries that we do not have and that we do need to get. And I have a feeling initiating that now is going to be a lot harder than if we had initiated that earlier. So that's my recommendation. Training for sure. Even if you seem like you're doing great or the dog seems like it's great, there are going to be bad habits that you instill by accident. It's just going to happen. They're wild animals. As my husband said, they're animals. And if you don't have a good handle of it when you first get them, they'll walk all over you. That's what's happened here. And that's what may be happening to you and what may happen to you. But I do want to say, I know I'm talking a lot about this kind of how difficult it is. I hope you are hearing from this that there are strategies and there are things you can do, should do. I really don't recommend getting more than one dog at a time. That is my first thing. I learn from my mistake. You can get a second one later, but if you get this first one, you can completely focus on it, its needs, its training, establish your bond, your, everything. So I really don't recommend getting 2 dogs at once. If you have and you do, guess what? I have other strategies. They need to get trained. You guys, you and your partner, you need to establish boundaries. You need to figure out how to take control. And I think a lot of people, that sounds so vague. That sounds vague to me. Get training. You need a professional. And it's worth trying to save up money for that. If you have the one dog, maybe they don't need private training. You could take them to an obedience class that's really cheap at a PetSmart or something like that. Training at home for 2 dogs, personal, individualized training is going to be a lot of money. That's one of the reasons we haven't done it yet, because it's hundreds of dollars, and that's what we need. We can't take both of them to obedience training. They'd be insane. It just wouldn't work. I just want you to know that there are options out there. The shelter you may have adopted from may have some help for you. Not necessarily financially, but they might have classes or advice. Not only that, but I do want to say that even though they have been one of the biggest challenges in the last couple of years in my life, one of the biggest changes in my life, they have also been one of the biggest joys of my life. Getting teary-eyed. They are so loving, so accepting of you, of whoever you are. If you love them, feed them. They're not picky. They will love you unconditionally forever. Forever. That has been one of my greatest joys. Over the pandemic of the past 2 years of my life since getting diagnosed, I have the love of a great man, and I have the love of 2 fuzzy puppies. If you think you would benefit from that kind of relationship, from that partnership, from that life bond, I'm not discouraging you from that. I think it's a wonderful thing. But make sure you think it through. Think it through. And if you are or not, maybe not. But once I knew even before I was not diagnosed with ADHD when I went for these dogs, but I knew that I was pushing something that I shouldn't be pushing for. I knew I was being impulsive, and I let it take over. Sometimes you have to go against what the heart wants. What the heart wants and what your part of your brain is telling you need. If you're not sure, get a small pet. I had rats growing up, and they're very intelligent. You could get a bird, a cat. Not to say cats are easier, they're just smaller, and you don't have to take them outside. Either way, really think it through about what you can offer and what you need. Maybe you think I need love and I need a bond with an animal like this because I grew up like this. This was my life when I was a child. Think about why you need it. Do you need it because your life is chaotic? That's not the reason to get the dog. It's going to make your life more chaotic. You need to be in the most set place of your life when you get a pet, usually. Like me and my husband were, and still, it was a boop show. It was hard. It was really difficult. So you need to be in a stable, secure position in your life, mentally, physically, emotionally. And that doesn't mean to say you need to be perfect, but if you're struggling with your job, not a time to get a pet. If you're struggling with your executive dysfunction and you don't have routines set up, you don't even have your own morning routine set up for yourself yet that works for you, you can't get a pet. It's going to be really difficult to help a pet adjust when you aren't even adjusted to your own life. So, yeah, it's a tough one, guys. I'm not going to lie. It's really a tough one because, like I said, we were set up to go, and still it was a struggle. If you have any questions for me, honestly, reach out. I have no problem. I really want you to reach out. This is why I'm doing this. I'm trying to connect with more neurodivergent women. I have none of them in my life, so I'd really love to connect with anyone out there who is feeling like they're connecting to what I'm saying. If you have any questions about getting a pet, what it was like for me, further things, please reach out. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. My Brain Is A Wonderland Pod. I have an email, mybrainisawonderlandpod@gmail.com. You can reach me at any of those. If you are liking what you're hearing, please leave a review wherever you're listening, on Apple or Spotify, Stitcher. I really would appreciate that. And remember, this is the first of 2 episodes this week. We're now coming at you twice a week. And tomorrow, Wednesday, I am going to talk about my missed diagnosis. So how a teacher recognized a symptom of autism. I went to a doctor, and still it was missed. So if you want to hear about that, tune in tomorrow. And with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you next time on My Brain Is a Wonderland. Bye-bye.